Hello, ladies. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the 5 key hormones of metabolism. I'm going live every single day this week to talk about some of the hormones that have a massive impact on our ability to lose weight. Yesterday, I talked about cortisol, but I went in the wrong group. So if you joined me live here, if you came here trying to find me live and were like, where is Haley? Well, it's because I did go live, but in a completely different group. I have posted that video under the announcements inside this group. So if you didn't see that video, please go and watch it, because cortisol is a super important hormone when it comes to weight loss resistance. And that was the most important talk of the week. So go to the announcement section when you have a second, and you'll see a link to the live that I did yesterday on cortisol. Today, we are looking at the second most important hormone, which is insulin. And throughout the week, we're also going to look at thyroid, we're going to look at estrogen, and we're going to be looking at human growth hormone. And the reason that I wanted to do this mini series is to help women understand that when it comes to weight loss, it's about a lot more than calories in, calories out. In my personal belief, and I know that this belief is shared by many weight loss experts, some of the key components of sustainable and easy weight loss are hormonal balance, optimized metabolic health, and creating a more sustainable approach. And that's what we're going to be learning about today. Now, I can see that you guys are joining me live, and I'm just updating my Facebook page to make sure that I'm in the right group. Actually, you guys tell me right now, do you see this inside Perimenopause Body Solutions? I just want to make sure that today I am in the right group. Oh, there we are. I am. Perfect. Yippee, yippee. All right. So before I continue, like always, I would love to know if you are joining me live or if you are catching the replay. And so if you're live, just say hello and tell me where you are joining me from. And if you are watching this on replay, like most of you will, if you could do me a little favor right now and just put a replay in the comments, that would be very much appreciated. Here's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're talking about insulin. And insulin, as the title says, it literally stops fat burning in its tracks. So you can understand why it is such an important hormone that needs to be taken into consideration when we're talking about weight loss and weight loss resistance. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about what the role of insulin is in the body, what the insulin theory of obesity is, what happens when we eat food. Okay, this is really, really important. You have to understand what happens when we eat food in order to understand why insulin is so important. We're going to talk about how insulin makes us gain weight. We're going to talk about what insulin looks like what are the signs and symptoms. And of course, we're going to talk about what to do about it. So let's dive in. So I'm going to start with a little bit of story, because this is going to help you appreciate just how strong the relationship is between insulin and weight management. And I'm going to share the story of one of my girlfriends who, when she was in about her mid-20s, this was about 15 years ago. So she was probably about in her mid-20s. And this woman, this girl, was very, very, very healthy. She ate healthy. She was very active. And suddenly she just started getting very sick. She was tired all the time. She was losing weight. She would trying to reconnect. There we go. And eventually she got rushed to the hospital. And what they found out was that she had late onset type 1 diabetes. And by the time that they figured out what was wrong with her, she was literally almost skin and bones. Like she was so small, and she had like these bruises all over her body. Like she was really, 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 really sick. And so when the doctors found out that she had type 1 diabetes, they started to give her insulin, because type 1 diabetes is actually a disease of not enough insulin. And so they started giving her insulin, and just like that, she started to put on weight. In fact, she put on more weight than she wanted to. This, despite being, like I said, one of the healthiest women that I know, who, made everything from scratch, followed a Paleolithic diet, gluten-free, dairy-free. Her favorite snack. I'm just going to go get my plug here. So, anyway, suffice to say, just on that story, I think you can start to see the role of insulin. So, insulin, basically what it does is, let's kind of make sure I can hear guys. Basically what it does is it determines how our body is going to, what it's going to do with energy, and it is vital to our health. And so it's all about not too much, not too little, but just right. And you're going to hear me talk about this principle over and over and over again during our talks this week, because it really, when it comes down to hormones and pretty much everything, the balance really is key. So the next thing I want to talk about with you guys is just like sort of like the hormone theory of weight loss, in case you've never heard about it. So again, in the world of weight loss, there are sort of two very popular theories. One that you already know very well, which is the CICO theory, or the calories in, calories out theory. And if you've been dieting your whole life, then you know that theory is flawed, because I know plenty of women who exercise, as much as they possibly can, and watch their diet, and yet they cannot lose weight. And really, that is because it's a little bit more complicated than calories in, calories out. Now, another sort of approach to weight loss is this belief that that we need to take into account the impact of hormones on our metabolism. And when it comes to insulin specifically, the theory goes a little like this. And this theory, I learned about it from Jason Fung. Maybe you've heard of him before. He wrote two very popular books. One is called The Obesity Code. One is called The Diabetes Code. He is a nephrologist based out of Ontario, Canada, and he works specifically with type 2 diabetics. And type 2 diabetes, you may or may not know, is a disease of too much insulin. Okay, so he understands insulin and like he's like an insulin pro. And so basically the theory goes something like this. You can think of insulin as a fat storing hormone. So it tells the body to store energy. And it would have evolved as humans evolved, right? It would have evolved to keep us alive. And so the idea being that when we would eat, we would trigger the release of insulin so that we would store energy away for later use when there was no food available. And again, go back to like our ancestors, like our cave women ancestors who did not have access to food all the time, and they went through these long bouts of famine. And so insulin, again, biologically would have evolved to protect us, to create this storage mechanism. And so the idea is that when we eat, insulin increases, it signals to the body to store fat. Now, again, that would have been great back then, but nowadays we can eat whenever we want. And most of us are overeating. And so we're constantly sending this storage message to our body. So every time we eat, the body is receiving this message to store fat, store fat, store fat for later. And so the theory being that the problem is not so much the calories, it's the insulin. And this has been popularized by both the Atkins diet way back when, as well as the keto diet now. And within this model, the belief is that you can eat as many calories as you want, essentially, as long as you're not triggering insulin. That if insulin is the problem. And so if insulin is the problem, then the solution is pretty simple. We have to lower insulin. Okay, so that's what that sort of model is like. So what I want to do next is I want to dive into exactly what happens when we eat. And this is really important to understand because I want you to understand exactly what is happening in your body so that you understand the power of insulin. Okay? So when we eat food, right? When we eat food, it gets digested and it gets broken down into macronutrients. So or into essential into like smaller units. So amino acids, glucose, and triglycerides. And then that food goes through from our intestinal tract into our bloodstream, where it gets used as energy by our body. Okay, some of that energy is used immediately, and some of that energy gets stored away for later use. Now, I want to kind of dial into what happens when we eat carbohydrates in particular. So when I'm talking about carbohydrates, and I'm going to kind of say what they are because a lot of times women think of carbohydrates as sort of like just being like your pasta and your bread and your donuts and your chocolate and your chips, but it is also fruit and whole grains and vegetables and sweet potatoes. Okay, so I just want to make sure we understand what carbohydrates are. So when they get digested, they get broken down into glucose, which is sugar, and then they get absorbed into our bloodstream. And what happens is as that glucose comes into our bloodstream, we see a rise in blood glucose, which triggers the release of insulin. And one thing to understand here is that your like sugar, like glucose, is considered toxic to your body, right? So your body is always wanting to keep your blood sugar levels in a very sort of like small range. The moment it goes over and above that range, one of the roles of insulin is to bring it back down. There are kind of three hormones that play around with just keeping this small little range. So insulin brings blood sugar levels down. Cortisol, which we talked about yesterday, brings blood sugar levels up, and so does another hormone called glucagon, which I'm not going to talk about today. But you have to understand that. So insulin, part of its job is when the body perceives a rise in glucose above what it likes to be in, like that specific range, it's going to trigger the release of insulin. And insulin then has two jobs. So its first job is to take some of that glucose and pull it into our cells where we turn it into immediate energy. And the second role of glucose is to take any excess glucose and store it for later use because your cells only need so much, right? And so anything above that is going to get stored. So where is it getting stored? And this is a really important part to understand here. So any excess sugar above and beyond what our cells need for immediate energy, first it's going to get stored in our liver. Okay, that's where excess glucose is going to go and get stored as glycogen. But your liver, think about how big your liver is. Like it's a storage unit, but it's got like a certain size to it. So it's kind of like renting a storage unit. Let's say you rent 50 square meters. Well, you've got 50 square meters. Once that's full, you can't put anything else in there. Well, the same is true of your liver. Your liver can store about 400 grams worth of carbohydrates, which is it's the equivalent of about 1,600 calories. What happens when the storage unit is full? And this is where you're going to have like that aha moment. So above and beyond, like once the cells are full and once the liver is full, excess glucose gets turned into triglycerides, which is the storage form of fat. And you can imagine where that goes. Okay, so any excess blood glucose is going to get turned into fat, and then your body's going to store it in your fat cells. Okay, so just to recap, we eat food, blood glucose levels go up. This triggers the pancreas to release insulin. Some of that blood glucose goes into our cells, and we use it as immediate energy. Anything that we don't need immediately is going to get stored in our liver until our liver is full, and then it's going to get stored in our fat cells. Now, I want you to imagine for a second what happens if we eat more carbohydrates than we need, and we do this day after day after day after day, which is basically the standard American diet. So basically what happens is you eat a bunch of carbs, right? Some of the carbs get used for immediate energy. Some of the carbs go to your liver. Some of the carbs get to reconnect. Oh, there we go. Some of the carbs are going to get stored into your liver, but not all of them. Some of them are going to go to your fat cells for later use, right? So then you're going to go to bed. You go to sleep, you're fasting overnight, and your body is utilizing some of the stored energy in your liver to just, keep you alive overnight, but it's not using all of the energy. So then the next day you wake up and you do the same thing. You eat some carbs, your blood sugar levels go up, insulin gets released, some go into your cells, some go into your liver, but there's not as much room in your liver, so more of it goes into your fat cells. And this cycle repeats over and over and over. And what happens is that there's less and less room in the liver, and eventually most of those carbohydrates get turned into triglycerides and get stored in our fat cells. So I'm sure that you guys can see how this might cause weight gain. So I'm going to teach you guys a visual that I learned from Jason Fung, and this is a visual that I have never forgotten, and it's one that I like to think about when I'm trying to kind of conceptualize or explain insulin. So I want you to think of your liver as your fridge in your house, right? So that is where you're going to store your fresh fruit, your fresh vegetables, your dairy, your meat, whatever, your condiments, like all of those are going to go in your fridge. That's your liver. Now I want you to think of your fat cells as the freezer that you have in your basement, right? That's where the excess food goes, right? You come back from Costco, you do a big Costco haul, you've got all this extra meat, you've got all these casseroles and these frozen foods, and you're going to go put them in the freezer in your basement. Now let me ask you this. Are you going to go downstairs in the freezer and pull out food, or in the basement and pull out food out of your freezer if your fridge is full of fresh food? Probably not. And so this is the way that I want you to think about what is happening in your body, right? If your liver is full of energy, there is no reason for your body to go to the freezer in the basement, which are your fat cells. Is this resonating? Are you guys kind of starting to see how insulin has such a powerful impact on our ability to tap into our stored energy in our fat cells? If you guys can give me a thumbs up and let me know that you're kind of understanding how insulin works, because I really try to break the science down into analogies that you guys can understand, and I really want this to kind of make sense to you. So basically what I'm saying is that you're not going to tap into the freezer, your fat cells, until you clear out the fridge, right? So we've got to clear out the fridge in order to get into the freezer. We've got to clear out the stored glycogen in our liver in order to tap into our fat cells. And this is such an important part of biology that we really need to understand. All right, thanks for the thumbs up, Donna and Michelle. I appreciate that, and everybody else that gave me a thumb and gave me some feedback. That really, really helps, because I know that sometimes when we talk about hormones, it just gets so complex, and I'm always trying to find ways to explain it in simple terms so that you guys can be like, yes, I get it. So yay. Okay, so how does insulin influence weight loss? So all you need to remember is 3 super simple facts. Number 1 is that insulin is a fat storage hormone, okay? So its message to the body, because all hormones tell a message, and insulin's message is store energy, store energy, store energy. It is often referred to as anti-lipolytic, which literally means against fat burning, okay? That's the number 1 fact you need to know about insulin and why it is so important when it comes to weight loss. The second thing you need to understand is that your body is a terrible multitasker. It cannot store energy and burn energy at the same time. So your body can either be in what is called, it's either storing energy, which is often called to as the fed state when insulin levels are up, or it can be burning energy, which is often called the fasted state when insulin levels are down. But it can't do both at the same time. And then the third thing that you need to know is that most of us spend more time storing energy than burning energy, and this is what makes weight loss so challenging. And this can be true even if you're watching your caloric intake. If you go back to that theory, right, that it's not so much about the calories, it's more about the hormones. If you're spending more time with insulin jacked up, then you are constantly sending the signal to store energy, even if you're trying to watch your calories. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So again, if this is like, if we believe in this theory, if we believe that insulin, too much insulin, is causing our weight management problems, then the solution is to lower insulin, right? And this is good. This gives us a lot of control, and we'll talk about this more. But I will say this right now is that I love helping women with insulin because I feel like it is probably the hormone that we can easily manipulate. Cortisol is a little bit harder. Estrogen, thyroid, those are a little bit harder. Insulin, like, you can have a massive impact on your insulin levels. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about, so we've talked about sort of what happens in the body, like, you know, how eating can cause a rise in insulin. And I want to just dig into some of the different things that can increase insulin levels. And obviously, I've talked about carbohydrates. We've talked about carbohydrates. So I want you guys to understand that when it comes to carbohydrates, I'm sure you've heard of the glycemic index. So the glycemic index essentially is a way of classifying carbs based on the effect that they have on insulin. Something that is high on the glycemic index is going to cause like a much bigger spike in insulin versus something that is low on the glycemic index. So something that is high would be like, you know this, sugar, right? Sugar and bread and pasta and donuts and crackers and all those things. And low would be typically sort of like your whole food carbs that are high in fiber, like one of my favorites that I had for breakfast, raspberries. They're still on the counter from earlier. Okay, so that is number one. And so we need to understand that even like within the sort of scope of carbohydrates, some carbohydrates are going to trigger insulin more than others. And then macronutrients. So macronutrients are like your big food groups. So protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are going to trigger insulin more than protein, and fat barely triggers insulin at all. So this is a really big hint into how you should be eating, okay? What else? So another thing is just like sort of like the composition of your meals, right? So even if you're eating the healthiest meals, right? Like you're making quinoa or lentils and sweet potatoes, if your meals are mainly composed of carbohydrates, that is going to have a bigger effect on your insulin levels than having a balanced meal where you have some carbohydrates, but you also have protein and you also have healthy fats. Okay, so that's going to have an impact. How often you eat in a day. So again, when we eat, we trigger insulin. So if you're doing breakfast and then have a snack, and then you have lunch, and then you have a mid-afternoon snack, and then you have dinner, and then you have like that late night snack while you're watching TV, well, you're basically having like you're basically having these insulin you're triggering insulin all day long, right? You're triggering insulin all day long. Physical inactivity. So physical inactivity, the way that it's going to impact your insulin is pretty simple. Like as I said, some of the food that you eat is going to be stored as or used as immediate energy. But if you're sitting in front of a desk all day long, your body doesn't need as much energy. So you're going to have a harder time getting rid of those higher insulin levels. Chronic stress. If you missed my talk yesterday on cortisol, I know I didn't go live here, but again, find it in the announcements, but we talked a lot about cortisol and the impact that cortisol has on your insulin. You could have the best diet. You could be eating keto. You could be practicing fasting, and yet you could have insulin resistance because you're chronically stressed out. So definitely go and listen to that one. It's really, really important. Poor sleep. Poor sleep has been proven to make us less insulin sensitive. And I'm going to talk about what that term means in a second. And then finally, menopause. Okay, so menopause. This is another really important thing that I think women over 40 need to understand, is the relationship between estrogen and insulin. So estrogen makes us more insulin sensitive, which means that we can tolerate carbs. So let's say, for example, I'll grab a little example here. So let's say I have this mango here, okay? So let's say if I am insulin resistant, I'm insulin sensitive. I can eat this mango, and I might need. I'm gonna like throw out like some silly numbers. These don't actually mean anything, but let's just pretend that as an insulin sensitive person, I need 10 units of insulin in order to process this mango. If I am insulin resistant, maybe I now need 20. Okay? So really, really important to understand that concept. So insulin resistance basically just means that your body is now ignoring insulin, and so your body has to produce more and more of it to metabolize the same amount of glucose. And so as you can imagine, when you are insulin resistant, your insulin levels go up, 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 and you're producing more and more of it. That's going to be a problem. Okay, menopause, what happens when our estrogen levels decline is that we lose our insulin sensitivity. So as estrogen goes down, we naturally become more insulin resistant. So now we need the 20 units to eat the same mango that we only needed 10 when we were in our 30s. Okay, again, this is an oversimplification, but I want to kind of break it down into super simple terms for you guys to understand. So some of the signs and symptoms of insulin resistance. So if you're nearing menopause, okay, you are kind of getting close to menopause. Like you're like sort of like pushing like late 40s, early 50s, then I would certainly start getting tested. And I will just take this as a little side note here, but a lot of women post-menopause develop type 2 diabetes for this exact reason, okay? Obviously, like a poor diet is not going to help, but just we need to understand this because this isn't just about weight loss, it's also about our health, right? If you are always hungry, right? So if you're always hungry, this is the way I like to explain it to my clients is that if you're insulin resistant, what happens is that insulin is trying to get into your cells to give you immediate energy, but your cells have blocked it off. Like they are just like, nope, I can't even hear you anymore. And so if you can imagine what's happened, like how your body perceives this is you're eating, right? You're eating like you eat this big meal, but your cells aren't getting the energy that they need. So to your brain, you're still starving. And I hear this from a lot of women, and this happens in a lot of women that have a lot of extra weight to lose, who also struggle with insulin resistance, is that they eat and they eat and they eat, but they always feel hungry, even though they shouldn't be hungry. And it's because their body literally thinks they're starving because it's not getting energy. Everything's getting stored away. Okay? You're craving carbohydrates, right? If you crave carbohydrates, if your main craving is like you're dreaming of like donuts and chocolate croissants and chocolate bars, that is the sign of insulin resistance. If you gain most of your weight around your belly, that is a sign of insulin resistance. It could also be a sign of estrogen dominance, which we'll talk about on Thursday, or it could be a sign of not enough estrogen, which we won't talk about, but I will quickly explain that on Thursday. If you have been told that you have PCOS, there's a good chance that you're insulin resistant. If you're swollen, right, if you're like retaining water, then I would definitely get your insulin levels checked, because what happens is that water attaches to glucose in our body. And if you remember, what happens is we have our blood glucose comes up, and that's what triggers the release of insulin. And so oftentimes women who are retaining water have high blood glucose levels and therefore high insulin levels. And when women first start working with me and I put them on a lower carb diet, a lot of women see like this big whoosh, right? This big drop of weight in the first week. And really what that is it's the body releasing all of that water. And so they feel less swollen. They feel less inflamed. If your triglycerides are high, so if you get your blood test done by your doctor quite often, and maybe you've been told your triglycerides are high, maybe your doctor has already talked to you about this, but again, triglycerides are the storage form of fat. And you might, in your mind, think, okay, well, it's because of the fat in my diet. No, it's because of the carbs. It's because of the carbs. It's because you're having too many carbs, and your liver is full, the fridge is full, and your body is like, what do I do? Okay, let's turn it into fat and put it in the fat cells. Because if you think about it, like your fat cells. This is like the unlimited storage unit. Like I mean, look at people who are super obese. You can store fat in your fat cells until the cows go home, right? What else? The only other thing or the other thing that you can look at to determine if you have insulin resistance is your blood glucose levels. And there's a super simple test that like literally anyone can do. And this is something that type 2 diabetics do all the time. So you can test your blood sugar, right? You can go to the pharmacy and you can get a little meter and you prick your finger. Maybe I'll do it before when we get to the end, because I do have one and I test mine all the time because I'm just a geek like that. But you prick your finger and you get a little drop of blood, and it will tell you exactly how much blood glucose is in your bloodstream at any given moment. And if there's more blood glucose than your body likes, then you know for a fact that you've got more insulin. And if it's constantly high, then you know for a fact that you've got constantly high insulin and likely insulin resistance. Now, you can also go to your doctor and ask for a test. The one that I find is the most sort of representative is called hemoglobin A1C. And you can kind of think that it gives you sort of like a 3-month average of what your blood sugar levels are at. And if your blood sugar levels are constantly high, then you just know that insulin is constantly high, because that's what insulin's job is, right? Is to bring blood glucose levels down. Okay, so what do we do about it, right? What do we do about it? So how can you lower insulin so that you can tap into those fat cells, right? Like how can we get the body to basically deplete the liver of glycogen and tap into those fat cells? So again, like I said earlier, the good news is that you can lower insulin and you can improve your insulin sensitivity with nutrition and lifestyle. You do not need fancy drugs. You don't need to take, hormone replacement therapy. Like, I feel like this is the hormone that we have the most power over, and we can create a massive change in our in just our insulin levels by making changes to our diet and making changes to our lifestyle, to our routine. So what I do inside my program, Perimenopause Body Solutions, with my clients is I basically have there's kind of like 2 goals. So my first goal is I want to lower insulin. And my second goal is that I want to restore insulin sensitivity. Because what you may or may not know about me is, although I do like a lower carb lifestyle, I also really like carbs. And so my goal is not to take carbs away from women for the rest of their life. My goal is to teach them how many carbohydrates can you get away with based on your hormones and your metabolic health at the moment. And we try to improve that. And we try to make it so that they can have carbohydrates, but just staying within what is reasonable for their hormonal profile. Okay? So some of the things I do. So let's start with lifestyle. So lifestyle habits that I teach women. So number one of the things that I do inside my program is exercise that builds lean muscle mass, right? So when women lose weight, oftentimes if they're not doing it properly, they are losing muscle mass along with fat. And when we lose lean muscle mass, we not only slow down our metabolism, but we also lose some of our insulin sensitivity, because your muscles are another storage unit for insulin. The more muscle you have, or storage for carbohydrates. The more muscle you have, the more glucose you can store in your muscles. So making sure that as we're losing weight, we are protecting our lean muscle mass, or better yet, building our lean muscle mass is going to be super, super important. My other big thing when it comes to lifestyle is walking. So yesterday I talked about walking, and I said that walking is the only exercise that reduces cortisol. It is also one of the best exercises for also improving insulin sensitivity. Any exercise will improve insulin sensitivity, but walking is especially good because it also lowers cortisol. Okay. The other thing I like to do is talk to my clients about sleep and why sleep is so important and how to improve their sleep. Because like I said, if you're sleeping 4, 5, 6 hours a night, then then just by not sleeping enough, you are going to make yourself more insulin resistant, and you will not be able to tolerate carbohydrates as well as a woman who gets 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep a night, of good solid sleep. And then, of course, we talk about a personalized stress management plan, because stress management, which is the topic of yesterday, go back and watch it if you didn't, is all about cortisol. And all I will say is that you can have the perfect diet and you can still be constantly spiking insulin if you are constantly spiking cortisol. And yesterday I gave you guys a stat, which is that women, it is believed that we are triggering cortisol 25 to 50 times a day. So you could be intermittent fasting, you can be avoiding snacks, but you could be triggering that release of cortisol, which triggers insulin all day long. It is that important. Cortisol is the queen. We got to take care of her. Okay, nutrition habits. So when it comes to nutrition, one of the first things that I like to do with my clients is deplete that liver, right? Deplete the glycogen stores in the liver. And that requires going, I wouldn't say excessively low carb, but quite low carb for a certain period of time, because I want the body to start using up all of the excess glycogen in the liver, like all of the blood glucose that has been stored in the liver. And then once it's depleted that, I also want the body to start tapping into our fat cells. And your body has the ability to do that, but oftentimes it's forgotten how to do it because it never has to do it because the fridge is always full. So we got to empty the fridge, and then we got to remind the body that there's a freezer in the basement that has plenty of energy, okay? From there, once we've done that, then it's all about teaching women how to create a well-formulated low-carbohydrate diet, which means that we want to be eating plenty of vegetables, we want to get moderate amounts of protein, we want to have lots of fiber, we want to add in plenty of healthy fats, and all of those things are going to help to really just balance out our blood sugar levels. So that yes, there's a rise in insulin, but it's not like a surge. We're not on a roller coaster. We're on the baby roller coaster. So we have little baby surges, and that's it, right? And so the way that you can compose your meals, you can have such an amazing impact and such control over your insulin. And I know this because I can eat a meal, and I test my blood sugar levels, and I can eat a meal and barely see a rise in my blood glucose. And it's because I know how to build my meals to avoid having that big blood sugar spike. And then, of course, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of snacking. So once I know that my clients have the ability to access the freezer in the basement and access the energy in their fat cells, I take away their snacks, okay? Because I don't want them having snacks. I want them to have as much time during the day. If you remember, the body's not a multitasker, right? So it's either in the fed state or the fasted state. I want them in the fasted state as much as possible because that's when they're accessing their fat stores. And that's why we also throw in intermittent fasting as a tool to really maximize the body's ability to tap into our fat stores. So those are sort of like the main hacks that I use to, again, help women to lower their insulin levels and help them to improve their insulin sensitivity. And once we've done that, then we can bring carbs back. Then we can bring some carbs back, maybe not like a chocolate croissant for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but we can bring some of them back. And now our body has the ability to handle those carbohydrates. And I think this is a mistake, is that women think like, after listening to me talk, it's like, okay, carbs are bad. They're not bad. It's just that we need to make sure that your body has the ability to handle them. When your body has the ability to handle them, you can have the carbs and you won't have the negative impact as long as you're not doing it all day long. So I hope that was helpful. If that was helpful, I've got a cheat sheet for you guys as well. I did one for cortisol yesterday. If you want to get the cheat sheet, I'm going to get you guys to sign up to get the recordings and the cheat sheets by email because it's just too lengthy for me to send them out to everyone, especially when I'm going live every single day. And so to sign up for that, it's on my website. So it's projectmenopause.ca/mini-series. And if you go there, you can sign up and then you'll get all the recordings and I'll be even sending all of them out at the end of the week in case you miss any, and you'll get the cheat sheets as well. If you need more help, if you're like, okay, Haley, this is great, but now I am so completely overwhelmed, and I need some support, I need some help putting this into practice, then I'm going to take 5 minutes just to tell you guys about my program and about the Black Friday promo that I have on right now if you are interested in getting some help and working with me as your coach. So my program is called Menopause Body Solutions Personal Coaching Program, and it is 14 weeks long. And inside that program, what I give women is a structured nutrition plan and a structured lifestyle plan that tells them exactly what to do. It tells you when to eat, it tells you what to eat, you get recipes, you get email reminders. Like, it is a step-by-step how to implement everything that I'm teaching you this week. And it comes with personal coaching. So you get to talk to me whenever you need to, and if you need to talk about mindset, or you need to talk about upcoming challenges, or you have questions, or something isn't working for you, or you hit a plateau and you need help tweaking your approach, that is when the one-on-one coaching comes in hand. Now, the basic program is 3 months, but I also offer 6 months for women who have more weight to lose. And what I'm doing over Black Friday is I'm offering all of this at a discounted rate, and I'm throwing in a ton of bonuses. So anyone who decides to join my program at the moment gets like over $900 worth of bonuses that you can use while you're doing the program, after you've done the program, whenever you want. And you can start the program whenever you want. Most women, I'm going to encourage them to start in January. But if you do decide to sign up, I will make sure to get you set up for the holidays so that you start the program with 3 steps forward, not 3 steps back. If this is something that you're interested in doing, what I want you to do is reach out to me. You can reach out in the comments. You can send me a DM and just say, hey, Haley, I'd like to learn about your Black Friday promo, because then what we're going to do is we're going to get on the phone together. It's impossible for me to explain the program in like a short period of time. And what I do when I get on a call with women is really, I want to learn about your goals. I want to learn about your dieting history. I want to figure out like what is getting in your way so that I can figure out why are you struggling to lose weight. And once I have that information, I can tell you if I think my program can help or not. And we can talk about options and see if we'd be a good fit for working together. So again, the Black Friday promo is going to be on. You can, if you decide to do it, you've got until next Friday. So I guess that's the 3rd. But in between now and next Friday, we've got to get on the phone and chat, because, I like to make sure that if clients do want to do this, that we're a good fit, that I know I can help. I don't take clients that I don't think I can help. So again, I would definitely encourage you to get a call with me, and let's talk about it. Let's see if I can help. Tomorrow, we are talking about the thyroid. Okay, so we've covered cortisol, we've covered insulin. Tomorrow, we are talking all about thyroid. If you don't know anything about the thyroid, I will tell you right now, a great way to think about it is that it is going to put the brakes on your metabolism. And the slower your metabolism, the harder it's going to be to lose weight. So tomorrow, we're going to explore that specific hormone and how you can really support it so that you can improve your metabolism and facilitate fat loss. Thank you so much for watching, ladies, and I'll see you